There are moments involving the British royal family when a single photograph, a carefully chosen sentence, or even a noticeable absence can send royal watchers into a frenzy. And today, one name is at the center of intense speculation: Prince Louis. The youngest child of Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, has always attracted enormous public attention. From his unforgettable expressions at royal ceremonies to his playful moments beside his older siblings, Louis has become one of the most recognizable young members of the royal family. But now, a much more serious question is circulating. Is there something happening behind the scenes that the public simply does not know about? Social media posts and sensational headlines have recently claimed that the palace has confirmed heartbreaking news concerning Louis's health. Some versions of the story have even suggested that the young prince is facing a private medical battle that his family has deliberately kept away from the public. But before we go any further, there is an extremely important distinction that needs to be made. There is currently no verified palace announcement confirming that Prince Louis has a particular illness, diagnosis, or ongoing medical condition. That matters enormously, because when the subject is an 8-year-old child, speculation can very quickly become something much more damaging than ordinary royal gossip. So what is actually known? And why have claims about Louis's private health suddenly attracted so much attention? Let's begin with the facts. Prince Louis was born on April 23, 2018, and from the beginning, his parents have attempted to give their children a childhood that is as normal and protected as possible. That approach has always created a delicate balance. On one side, the public is fascinated by the future generation of the monarchy. On the other, William and Catherine are parents first, and their children's privacy remains extraordinarily important. That privacy becomes even more significant whenever the subject turns toward health. Unlike senior working royals, young members of the family do not routinely have their medical information discussed publicly. There is no requirement for the palace to explain every appointment, every illness, every doctor's visit, or every private family concern involving a child. And that is precisely why online claims suggesting that the palace has secretly confirmed a diagnosis should be treated with extreme caution. Available reporting reviewed for this story found no official palace announcement confirming a medical or developmental diagnosis for Prince Louis. So where did the heartbreaking narrative come from? Part of the answer lies in the enormous interest surrounding Louis himself. Every time he appears in public, millions of people analyze his expressions, his behavior, his interactions with his siblings, and even small changes in his appearance. At royal events, Louis has often behaved like what he is, a young child surrounded by enormous ceremony. Sometimes he appears serious. Sometimes he becomes playful. Sometimes he looks overwhelmed by the crowds. And sometimes he produces exactly the sort of mischievous expression that has made him a favorite among royal watchers. But none of those moments can establish a medical diagnosis. That distinction is essential. A child's behavior at a public ceremony cannot be used as proof of a private health condition. Yet online speculation often takes a very different approach. A photograph is posted. A dramatic caption is added. Someone claims that insiders know something. Another account repeats it. And suddenly, thousands of people believe that a palace announcement must have taken place. But repetition is not confirmation. And this is where the story surrounding Prince Louis becomes particularly sensitive, because his parents have already experienced an extraordinary amount of public scrutiny surrounding their family's health. Catherine's own serious health ordeal transformed the atmosphere surrounding the Wales family. Her hospitalization and subsequent cancer diagnosis became major international news, and the family was forced to navigate an extraordinarily difficult period while remaining under constant public attention. For William and Catherine, protecting their children during that period was clearly important. The children were living through a deeply emotional family experience while their mother was undergoing treatment. That alone provides enough context to understand why the Wales family might be extremely cautious about discussing private matters involving their children. It also explains why rumors concerning Louis can become so emotionally powerful. People remember what the family has already endured. They see a young prince growing up under enormous expectations. And when an alarming headline appears claiming that something heartbreaking has happened, many viewers immediately fear the worst. But fear is not evidence. And neither is an anonymous social media post. Recent reporting has found no credible evidence that Prince Louis was hospitalized or received treatment for a newly announced condition in 2026. One review specifically noted that a sensational social media claim about a supposed palace confirmation could not be corroborated by established reporting. That doesn't mean the public knows everything about Louis's health. In fact, it means the opposite. There's a difference between saying the palace has confirmed something and saying the palace has chosen not to discuss something. Those are completely different claims. The first requires evidence. The second reflects a family's right to privacy. And that distinction may be the most important part of this entire story. Because there's another question that deserves attention. Why does the public feel entitled to know every detail about a royal child's private life? Prince Louis occupies a unique position. He is a member of the British royal family. He is also a child. Those two realities exist simultaneously. His position means that people naturally take an interest in his upbringing, his education, his appearances, and his future role. But being born into the monarchy does not mean that every private medical detail automatically becomes public property. In fact, the available record suggests that the palace has generally avoided publicly discussing Louis's medical or developmental status. And that brings us back to the dramatic phrase appearing in so many online headlines: private health battle. Those words are emotionally powerful. But without an official source explaining exactly what that battle supposedly is, they remain an allegation rather than a confirmed fact. There's, however, something genuinely heartbreaking about the situation. It is a possibility that an ordinary child could become the subject of extraordinary public speculation simply because of the family into which he was born. Imagine being 8 years old and having millions of strangers analyze your facial expressions. Imagine photographs from family events being examined frame by frame. Imagine rumors about your health spreading around the world before anyone has even established whether the original claim is true. That is a difficult reality surrounding royal children, and it is why responsible reporting matters. Interestingly, Louis's most recent public appearances have not presented the image of a child publicly withdrawing from royal life. At the 2026 Trooping the Colour ceremony, Prince Louis appeared alongside Prince George, Princess Charlotte, William, and Catherine on the Buckingham Palace balcony. Coverage described the children as increasingly comfortable with major royal occasions, with Louis once again attracting attention for his reaction to the IAF flypast. That appearance doesn't prove anything about his private health, but it does demonstrate why assumptions based solely on rumors can be misleading. A public appearance can tell us what the family chose to show the public on that particular day. It cannot tell us what happens behind closed doors. And perhaps that is the real story here. Not a secret diagnosis, not a dramatic palace cover-up, but the increasingly blurred line between public curiosity and a child's right to privacy. Still, one question remains. If there is no verified palace confirmation of a health battle, why are these claims continuing to spread? The answer may be simpler and more disturbing than many people realize. In the modern royal news cycle, emotional headlines travel faster than careful explanations. A headline saying Prince Louis attends a family event generates curiosity. But a headline claiming palace confirms heartbreaking private health battle creates urgency. It makes people click. It makes people share. And once thousands of people have repeated the claim, it can begin to look like established fact. But the palace has not publicly confirmed the dramatic medical claims being circulated about Louis in the sources reviewed for this report. And until an authoritative statement appears, that is where the story must remain. There is no responsible way to turn speculation about an 8-year-old's private health into certainty. What we can discuss is the extraordinary pressure surrounding this young prince. What we can examine is the family's approach to privacy. And what we can acknowledge is that, behind the titles, ceremonies, security, and cameras, Prince Louis remains a child growing up under circumstances almost no ordinary family could understand. And perhaps that is a part of this story that deserves the most attention. Because sometimes the most heartbreaking possibility isn't that a terrible diagnosis has been confirmed. Sometimes it is realizing how quickly a child's private life can become a worldwide spectacle. And if the palace eventually chooses to make an official announcement about Louis's health, that announcement, not an anonymous post, not a viral video, and not a sensational headline, should be the standard by which the public judges a story. For now, the responsible conclusion is clear. There is no verified palace confirmation of the dramatic private health battle being claimed online. But the intense reaction to the rumor tells us something very important about the public's fascination with Prince Louis and about the enormous responsibility that comes with reporting on a royal child. And there may be another side to this story that deserves even closer attention. Because what happens when royal privacy, public expectation, and the family's painful recent experiences collide? That is where the story becomes even more complicated. And that is where the story takes an even more important turn. Because when it comes to Prince Louis, there are really two stories happening at the same time. The first is a story people see in public. A young prince attending major royal occasions, standing beside his parents and siblings, waving to crowds and gradually becoming more familiar with the enormous responsibilities surrounding his family. The second story is the one that remains behind palace doors. And that second story belongs to Louis and his parents. Prince William and Catherine have repeatedly demonstrated that they want their children to have as much normality as possible despite being born into one of the world's most recognizable families. That means birthdays, school life, family celebrations, and personal matters do not necessarily become public announcements. It also means that silence from the palace should not automatically be interpreted as evidence that something terrible is happening. Silence can simply mean privacy. That distinction is especially important when discussing a child's health. Over the years, royal watchers have become accustomed to studying every detail of the Wales family's public appearances. If Louis appears quieter than usual, people notice. If Catherine speaks to him during a ceremony, people notice. If he misses an event, people notice. And when a photograph captures a moment that looks unusual, social media can transform that single image into an entire narrative within hours. But photographs cannot reveal what is happening medically. A serious diagnosis cannot responsibly be inferred from a facial expression. A child's posture cannot establish a medical condition. And an absence from a public engagement cannot automatically mean that something is wrong. Those are important safeguards, particularly because Prince Louis is still very young. The palace has a responsibility to protect the privacy of members of the royal family. But William and Catherine also have a responsibility as parents to decide what information about their children should remain private. And that is precisely why any future announcement about Louis's health would be significant. If the family ever chooses to publicly confirm a medical issue, the wording would matter, the source would matter, and the timing would matter. Until then, the public should be extremely careful about treating online claims as established truth. There is another emotional dimension to this story. The Wales family has already endured a period of enormous uncertainty surrounding Catherine's health. When she publicly announced a cancer diagnosis, the family's circumstances changed dramatically. William was suddenly balancing his duties as heir to the throne with his responsibilities as a husband and father. Catherine was undergoing treatment while the children were growing up under unprecedented international attention. For young children, that kind of experience can be deeply unsettling even when parents attempt to shield them from the public side of it. That context makes the current speculation about Louis even more emotionally charged. People may naturally wonder whether the family is facing another private challenge. But wondering is not the same thing as knowing. And responsible royal coverage has to maintain that boundary. So, what should viewers take away from all of this? First, Prince Louis's health is fundamentally a private family matter unless his parents or the palace decide otherwise. Second, sensational claims should always be checked against authoritative sources before being repeated. And third, the absence of a public confirmation should not be transformed into a confirmation simply because a headline sounds convincing. There is also something fascinating about Louis's place within the monarchy. When he was born, he was fifth in line to the throne. Today, he remains an important member of the next generation of the royal family, although his future role is likely to be very different from that of his older brother, Prince George. Louis has therefore grown up in a strange position. He is famous because of his family, but he is not expected to carry the same immediate burden as a future king. That could eventually give him more freedom. For now, however, his parents are clearly navigating the difficult balance between preparing their children for public life and allowing them to remain children. And perhaps that is why this latest wave of speculation deserves a more measured response. Rather than asking, what is the palace hiding? Perhaps the better question is, why do we assume that a child owes the public an explanation about his private life? That question changes everything. Royal families have historically been expected to share enormous portions of their lives with the public. But modern attitudes toward children's privacy have also changed. The fact that Louis is a prince does not erase the fact that he is a child. He deserves protection from unnecessary speculation just as any other child would. And if there's ever genuinely heartbreaking news concerning his health, the most appropriate response would not be excitement, speculation, or viral outrage. It would be compassion. For now, the strongest evidence available does not establish the dramatic health battle claimed in sensational online headlines. What is confirmed is that Prince Louis continues to grow up under extraordinary public scrutiny, surrounded by a family that has faced its own painful health challenges while attempting to protect its children. And that may be the most important conclusion of all. The palace does not have to reveal every private detail for the public to understand that William and Catherine's priority is their children. Sometimes protecting someone means refusing to turn their most vulnerable moments into public entertainment. So, until an official and credible announcement says otherwise, viewers should treat claims of confirmed private health battle involving Prince Louis with considerable caution. The mystery may continue. The speculation may continue. And social media will undoubtedly continue producing dramatic theories. But fact should remain more important than fear. Because behind the royal titles, behind the cameras, and behind the palace walls is a young boy whose life is still being shaped by his family. And perhaps the most respectful thing the public can do is allow him to grow up without demanding that every private moment become a public story. If the palace ever provides genuine information about Prince Louis's health, that will be the moment to examine the facts carefully. Until then, the story is not a confirmed medical tragedy. It is a powerful reminder of just how quickly speculation surrounding a royal child can become worldwide news. And that distinction matters.